this is Stephanie Calvert. And you're listening to Play That Rock and Roll.
This is not a test. This is Play That Rock and Roll. I'm your host, Joseph K., and like the song at the start says, just call me Joe. Today is our first interview of 2022, and our guest is Stephanie Calvert, the former vocalist for the band Starship featuring Mickey Thomas. Stephanie sang with Starship from 2006 to 2021. While doing research for my episode about Starship, I discovered that Stephanie had recently been fired from the band. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk to Stephanie, not just about leaving Starship, but her experience with the band and in the music industry as a whole. She was happy to come on and very generous with her time. So this interview is actually going to be presented in two parts. This first part, we're going to talk about her joining the band, her performances with residency groups like Raiding the Rock Vault, Rockers Collective, and Monday's Dark. We talk about her favorite songs to perform on stage, and she tells us about her best and worst gigs with Starship. And finally, she shares her memories of the tragic day when Starship guitarist Mark Abrahamian passed away. Part 2 of our conversation is coming after the weekend, and in that discussion, we cover her experience recording on Starship's 2013 album, Loveless Fascination, and then we get into the topic of why she is no longer with Starship. So stay tuned for that. Stephanie does not have a website or public social media at this time, but when she has those online, I will be sure to share them on my social media pages. So please subscribe to this YouTube channel and find us on Facebook and Twitter. And with that, here's part 1 of my conversation with former vocalist for Starship featuring Mickey Thomas, Stephanie Calvert.
We just wanna dance here.
Before we get into anything, I gotta tell you my own personal experience with your time with Starship. I saw you guys play at the Washington County Fair in West Bend, Wisconsin, all the way back in 2010. And I don't think you would have any reason to remember this, except maybe because you guys shared a bill with Dennis DeYoung and Kenny Loggins.
Yes.
Do you remember meeting Dennis DeYoung at that show, maybe?
I met him for a brief moment, but he was very, he was getting ready to go on, and it was, it was just kind of two ships passing in the night. It was just like, hey, hi. Some of them are easier to meet. Some of them are, if they're ready to go on, and I try not to be intrusive with their
sure.
I understand and all that stuff, but we did a show one time for iHeartRadio, and I'm like a gigantuan New Kids on the Block fan. That was like my era when I was younger, and Jordan Knight was like the love of my life. I had doll. I had a bed next to him. I'm just really making myself like nerd alert moment, but it was but I just remember they were in the hall across the way, because we were all on the same show, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to meet Jordan Knight, please, God. And as he was leaving, he stood and took a picture with me, and it was so amazing. It was just greatest rock and roll story moment of my life. Pop
Terrific.
Rock. Yeah.
Yes. Very good.
I'm like,
yeah, my girlfriend loves New Kids.
Oh, does she? I was like,
oh yeah.
I got to meet Robert Plant, and I'm like, and I have. In a show backstage years ago, but I was like, Jordan Knight, highlight, which kind of makes me that person.
At what point did you decide that you wanted to do music for a living?
Well, I don't think that I chose it. I think that it just chose me. I was always a performer. And like I said, in high school, I was in all the plays. I just loved theater. And I remember after high school and doing a few more musicals after high school, I think at the age of 26, I saved up whatever money I could, and I wanted to move to New York and be on Broadway. I wanted to be a Broadway star, or, semi-star, whatever. And I remember moving out to New York to do that.
Is this early 2000s?
Yeah, this is, so 95, yeah, early 2000s, really.
Okay.
Yeah, early 2000s. So probably 2003, 2002.
Okay.
And I moved out there, and I lasted about a month maybe in that particular area. It was New Amsterdam, and it was not where it is now. It was very not the best neighborhood. And so I would take the train and visit my family, and then they had like one of my families, they had a basement that they redid into apartments. So I just moved there. But about a month later, my dad got really sick. And so I came down to visit him, and he had lost a lot of weight. And then we found out it was cancer. And so my mom asked to move back, and she didn't really even have to ask me. Of course, I wanted to come and help because it was pretty serious. And so I came home back to Vegas and moved there and joined the band there and just started doing, I did band stuff before, but my heart was always Broadway, because I did so much theater, musical theater. But once that happened, I just started doing bands to pay the rent. And I really enjoyed singing, and it was great. And I got really lucky meeting different bands and learning a lot of different songs. And so that dream changed because my dad was more important than
absolutely. Yeah.
And so I stayed, and he lasted about 5 years. We thought for sure he would be a little bit longer, but we thought we were going to lose him then, but then he pulled through. And then 5 years later, he passed away, and it was a very hard time. And I remember quitting a band that I was in I just needed some time, because it just felt like, you want answers when I should have spent more time. I should have done this. And about 2 weeks after I took a break, I got a call from a local agent who knew who I was. And I was one of the few rock singers at the time. There's a lot more girls there now that sing rock, but they asked me if I was interested in auditioning for Starship. And I thought, Starship? Like, yeah, and so I came in and did a video of me singing the songs, and that was it. So, and then if you ask me the question, I could tell you how that all worked out. But obviously I got in the band, but that's my musical journey. It was just all music after that. I didn't really get to do plays. I did a show called Tony and Tina's Wedding.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that.
Many, many years. So that I was a swing in that, so that whenever I was in town, I could do that show. And I really enjoyed it because it kept my theater chops.
Oh, yeah. That is fascinating that you booked the Starship gig so early, relatively early in your music career. I just think it's so interesting that there are some artists who, they go out, they get into the industry and are desperate for, big high-profile jobs like that. And I think, it's a credit to your talent and your passion for the business that you were noticed really quickly out there.
I was, like I said, just the timing. I really felt like, because my dad passed away 2 weeks before I got into this band, like maybe 3 or I could be within a month. I will say that, before this opportunity fell on my lap. And I really felt like that was him and Jesus high-fiving, giving me like a shout out to give me something special. I'm sad because my dad never got to see me with this in person and with this band, but it really changed my life.
Okay. So I'm going to circle back to Starship. You mentioned the Rock Vault, rating the Rock Vault, which is a very popular residency out in Las Vegas. You got involved with that, I suspect, from your work with Starship, and I know you were also in another group called Rockers Collective, and these both came later. What is it like for you singing with a show like that versus touring with Starship? What are the pros and cons? What are the things you notice that are different about those shows?
Well, for 15 years, I hung out with the same guys for the most part, except for, when our guitar player, he passed away. That was really hard. And then our new guitar player came in and he was absolutely wonderful. But you spend more time with these people than you do your own family.
Mm-hmm.
So they become, what in my mind, because I'm a chick, I guess, where they become like family to you. But you build relationships with other people, and doing another show kind of gives you access to be singing songs from people who inspired you, and other than singing, just the Starship song. So it's a beautiful break from the norm, and it gives you a chance to reach out to other audiences. I was at home at the time. I was living in Vegas, so it was really nice. My only issue with being in shows sometimes, and I have a really uncomfortable digestive disorder, so being on stage sometimes is really scary. I remember there was one time where I didn't make a cue at the show in Ring the Rock Fall. That one's harder to not show up at, because they can fake it for a while, but it's like there's an order to it. With Starship is a little different. Like I could look at Mickey and go like, and I would have to run off and they would just sing a different song where, and for a long time, like there was a couple years where I had run off stage probably like 5 times during the show.
Wow. That's
not at one show, but like 5 shows. And I remember thinking like, I feel like I'm not good for you guys. And, people will make comments like, but it's just something that I've suffered with my whole life. And so that's the only downfall of being in a show versus like Ring the Rock Vault versus Starship. Starship was a little more lenient.
I'm glad Mickey didn't give you a hard time about that, because I'm sure he was used to that sort of thing from back in the early days when Grace or whoever would run off stage to do a line of coke,
But you find things out later that apparently was an issue for them.
Oh yeah.
But not the drug part, but me part. After.
Oh really?
Alcohol, you find things out that people will say like, at least this person doesn't have to like have special diet, and then you're just like, man, like that's not something I can help. That's just like saying like, at least this one doesn't have to have chemo. I mean, not comparing. I mean, obviously cancer is huge, but I have something that I can't help. But I don't it doesn't keep me from doing my job. I still come when I do my job. It's just sometimes I have to skip a song and then come back and sing it later.
Well, I'm sure the fans didn't notice. I've watched a lot of concert footage of you over the last couple of weeks, and the performances are always stellar. So, if you were missing for a song or two, I don't think anyone in the audience would have been disappointed, because when you were on stage, the music is just so great.
Well, I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
One performance in particular of yours that really stood out to me, I found this video just a couple of days ago. You did a cover of the old James Bond song For Your Eyes Only, and it was on a YouTube channel called Monday's Dark.
But you won't need to read between the lines. For your eyes only for you. You see what no one else can see. And now I'm breaking free for your eyes only.
And I'm a huge James Bond fan, and I love that song. And when I saw your performance of it, like as a fan of that song and that movie, I jaw-dropping. I couldn't believe how awesome you were with that. I imagine you must love that song. Tell me what made you pick that one to sing.
Well, Monday's Dark is an incredible charity event that they do. They used to do it I think one Monday a month, and it just got so popular
Oh,
that
okay.
two Mondays a month, and they got their own. It's called The Space, and it's a charity event that this gentleman, Mark Chinook, who came from Canada with the, I think it's the Rock. Oh, it's a musical that came to Vegas. It's not We Will Rock You. It's the other one. It's anyway.
Rock of Ages?
Rock of Ages. Yes,
Oh,
thank you.
okay.
I had a moment. And he just stayed in Vegas, and him and his wife do this. It was an incredible thing that he built, and he brings local, musicians, singers to come out, and then he started getting bigger and bigger, and so bigger singers come out and stuff, and they raise $10,000 and they pick a charity twice a month.
Wow.
And so that they usually do a theme, and that theme happened to be 007. So we all had to pick a song. He usually gets 10 or 11, sometimes 13 singers to come in. They pick a song from the theme. And I love Sheena Easton and I love that song. So I really wanted to do that song. So when they asked me, I said, can I do this song? And they said, yes. So I was really excited because I don't get to sing that song very often. And so it was a really cool night for me, and got to do my For Your Eyes Only, Sheena Easton.
That it was fantastic. If you
Yeah.
go back out on the road in a new band, please make that part of the set list. James
Oh my goodness.
fans of James Bond soundtracks don't get to hear those songs live very often. I think that's why it stuck out to me so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a treat. That particular charity event is one of my favorite things I'm most likely because I'm going to Vegas on March 7th, and
Okay.
they're going to do one that night. So I believe I'm going to hopefully be part of that one as well. I don't know what the theme is yet, but we'll see. Be on the lookout. But it's one of my favorite things to do because it's for a great cause, and we get to sing stuff that we really love. And they've had a Lady Gaga night, and they've had a Adele night, and they've had all the crazy awesome themes. So, but that
Very
was a
cool.
special night because that's one of my favorite songs to sing.
So let's circle back to Starship here. Let's talk about your time with the band. When you first got started with them, when they offered you the gig, I suspect the first thing you had to do was reacclimate yourself or refamiliarize yourself with Grace Slick and her singing style. And tell me about the experience of studying what she had done in the past and maybe integrating it into your own style. What was it like trying to find that balance to give an appropriate presentation of the music that she recorded, but not being like like a replay of it, like your own style?
Right. Well, I think I know I've said this in a couple interviews, I know that when I first joined the band, those are huge shoes to fill. And when people go to see an iconic band at some point, because Starship and Jefferson Airplane, they're a staple in rock and roll, especially back in the 60s and 70s. And so, especially Grace, she's an icon as a female rocker. She really changed and paved the way for a lot of women. And for me, I'm completely different than Grace Slick. Like, she's very psychedelic. I'm very not psychedelic. I'm a little edgier. I never did drugs.
I was gonna say you're probably sober.
Super sober. I don't have any crazy road stories. But I thought when I first joined that I had to be more like her. I had to sound more like her if I could. So when I first joined, I remember thinking those things and trying to emulate her as much as I could. But after a while, it just felt I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be more like me so that people got more of a tribute to her versus me trying to copy her.
Right.
You see, because there's no way I can do that. There's no way that I will ever know what it's like to be in her place, walking around. I don't, whatever she was doing at the time. She was, like I said, very in tune with, hippie world and psychedelic, and, maybe she was doing drugs during a performance. I have no idea. But I don't know that side of things. And I just thought, well, I'm more edgy and I'm more gritty. So why don't I just kind of throw my own spin on it, but still keeping it as close to her as possible.
I tease Grace, but in all sincerity, she is my absolute favorite classic rock female vocalist of all time. She's one of my favorite artists ever. So that's why and so when I saw you guys back in 2010, I remember paying very close attention to your performance, because even then I thought to myself, I hope you don't come out and try and just mimic what she did and like not acknowledge that she's not in the band anymore. I was really hoping that you would do something more original, and you did, and that's why I enjoyed that show. And that's why, I'm interested to hear your story, because like I know there's some artistic input here that you're doing, and it's different than, and not to be disrespectful about tribute shows, but you made that role your own, and you were in that band longer than she was.
A little bit longer.
Did you ever get a chance to meet her? Did you ever cross paths with her?
No, it's so sad, because there was a moment where she was in Las Vegas with her paintings, and I remember I had been on this massive run of shows, and I got off the plane and I had to go to this, not that I had to go, but I volunteered at my church to feed the homeless, right? And I walked off the plane. I thought I was going to pass out because I was exhausted, but I was like, I said I would be down there. So went down there, and I was going to go afterwards to see her up this place. And I was so exhausted, and that was my one moment where I could have probably met her. And I was so tired from all of the traveling and all of that stuff that it was my one moment, and I missed out. But that was the one time that I could have probably met her, and I didn't. I'm sad about it.
Well, yeah, but what you were doing was for a good cause, so there's nothing to be ashamed about there.
I could have done all of it, but I didn't. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, it's sort of interesting that, because she didn't maintain any sort of relationship with Mickey or the other guys in the band, right?
She did with Mick.
Did she?
Yeah, not like they talk every day.
Yeah,
but they had a decent relationship. They were definitely, they can call, like if he had an issue or something, he can call her up. They talked on the phone. I remember when a commercial came up, and they were using the music that both of them had been part of, and they had to decide, what they wanted to do with the money or something like that. But so they've talked, business wise, they were on a good level of friendship. So I know that they did speak to each other still.
I know that the Jefferson Starship in their run in the last 20, 30 years, they fairly frequently had alumni from the past sit in with them, make appearances, record some stuff, and, ex-members would be sort of in and out of the band. But I did notice that in that same run of time that Mickey's lineup stayed fairly consistent, and there wasn't a lot of sitting in. Was that like a priority of his, or was he trying to get people to pop in for visits, or was there just a lot of burned bridges that, he didn't want to explore?
Obviously there's a history with him and Donnie Baldwin, but like not a great one.
That's crazy to me that he's in Jefferson Starship right now.
It's super crazy. It's super duper crazy. I know him and Marty were well up. Paul never really cared for Mick, what the rumor was. So I know that there were people in that camp that really tried to get us to not be able to perform at certain places. They had, the whole drama with like having a fake Facebook page and someone coming in and saying bad things, and it's just stupid. After he passed, I don't think it was as bad, but him and Mick did not get along too well. I don't think. Mick never really said anything bad about him or anything, but there was obvious turmoil there. I think that's when Mickey joined the band. That's when Paul left. And so that's as far as I know. But I know that like Craig Chiquiso, who was in Starship, one of the original ones, wanted to put something back together again, but Mickey really just wanted to stay in his own lane and stay with Starship and keep that going and not be on a side project. So as far as like, I know Brett Bloomfield has come in and sat in and subbed for Jeff Adams, who's the bass player, and Brett used to be the bass player for them. So he's come in and sat in. I love Brett. Brett's amazing. But he doesn't really do as much music as he does. He does a lot of other stuff now, but sometimes we'll get someone to sit in once in a while, but he's very much, this is his band.
Right. That's fascinating. The industry stuff behind the scenes, I guess it's because I'm a big rock and roll dork, but you know, that I get a kick out of that because I've always wondered what it's like touring as an entity where there's a very similar national act. You know, that's what's so kind of bizarre about the Jefferson Airplane family tree. Jefferson Starship and Starship are very separate groups, but they play the same songs that the Starship would. Can you speak a little to that dynamic? Was there competition with them about getting certain gigs? What does that look like on your end of it?
I never really I know that people have come out to see the band and thinking that I was Kathy, which is weird because if they've seen Kathy, I'm like completely different than Kathy.
Right.
Like Kathy puts like Grace Slick and Janis Joplin together, and that's her performance, you know, which is great because she also does a Janis Joplin thing. But she's very psychedelic and very theatrical. I'm very, like I said, very rocky, very edgy, very like energy, that kind of thing. She's completely different performance, and we look different. I mean, she's got blonde hair and I've got black hair, so they're like, "Are you Kathy?" And I was like, "No." But I don't feel like needs to be a competition because there's enough for everybody, and people are going to come see me and like me better. People are going to go see Kathy and like Kathy better, and some people don't care. They just want to hear the music and be happy with just the music. So I never thought of Kathy as being, or that band being, a super competitive thing, except when we were booked at a show and then they didn't book us because they put Jefferson in or somehow. Then I was like bummed because I feel like we do a great show too. So, but it just is the preference of whatever venue, I suppose, or how it gets promoted and things like that. Jefferson Starship is very good at self-promotions.
Oh, okay.
You know, they put out another album. We put an album out like many years ago, but they're very, very present even in the social media aspect of things. So that would be something that I think that if Starship did, it would probably work in their favor. But it's, you know, it's not everyone's forte in that camp. So, but I think competition wise, I don't know how everyone else feels. I mean, I know that my old keyboard player Phil, who's in Starship, he's really good friends with Jude Gold, who's in, and you know, he came out to see us. We don't have any harsh stuff with them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No harshness there. I don't know about anyone else, but I never felt that, and I know Phil Bennett never felt that way because they're really good friends, and you know, and most of the guys in that band are pretty laid back. So
would there be genuine mix-ups with bookers and promoters, like they got the wrong band?
Pictures.
Oh man! Oh wow!
Like, we'll play a show and it'll be like Jefferson Starship's picture, and I'm like, there's a lot of difference there. There's like a lot of difference there. Or you know, they'll promote Jefferson Starship with Mickey's voice as the music.
Oh yeah,
I remember that. But other than that, like they'll introduce us as Jefferson Starship, and we have to make sure that, you know, this is Starship featuring Mickey Thomas instead of Jefferson Starship. So that's the only mix up. But it's never been like, what? Like the audience has never gone like, this isn't Jefferson, we're out of here. Like,
Right,
not that we've
right.
noticed, usually we can get them, like, if they were thinking it would be that one, then they got us, or if they were thinking it was us and they got the other one. I have never seen any major turmoil in that.
Okay. That's still funny that there is sort of that confusion, though, a little bit. Yeah. So when it comes
to fans that go to both, we have fans that go to both shows and enjoy both shows.
I am one of them. I enjoy both lineups, absolutely. And you're right to point out, like, it doesn't make any sense at all to compare you and Kathy Richardson. You have very different styles, and both are very cool styles that I enjoy quite a bit as a fan. But
yeah.
So let's talk about singing with Starship. There's a limited number of songs that you can do in a set list because, of course, you have to do the hits for the fans.
Yeah.
And there's only so many deep cuts. And also the Starship lineup, I guess, only did 4 albums. What were your favorite songs to sing? Were there any songs you wish to sing more of? And then the flip side, which ones, if any, did you get sick of singing from time to time?
You should interview the drummer. Let's see here. I really loved singing Set the Night to Music because when I was growing up, I didn't know that Starship was the original singer of Set the Night to Music. I always thought it was Roberta Flack and Maxie Priest, and I loved that song for so long. And then getting in this band, realizing that, holy cow, they originally sang this song.
Yeah.
So that was such a treat to be able to sing that song. Of course I love singing Somebody to Love because then I get to like really get raw. White Rabbit, I enjoyed singing because the people really loved that song. Least favorite? Oh man, I'm going to sound like such a kiss ass. I don't have a least favorite. I don't think that I sang none. Like I loved singing all the songs.
Okay.
I loved singing every single one of them.
Did you ever sing on Winds of Change?
Okay, no. I just sang the harmonies, even though that was a Mickey and Grace song. Mickey sang that song. And I just
okay.
I will say in the back of my, like in my heart, I wish that he would have shared that with me because I loved that song. And he when I first joined the band, he did it all the time. And then he took a break from it for a while because he'll pull out his acoustic and play it. When I first joined the band, Stranger was one of my favorites because it was this like really cool, different kind of song that I'd never heard. It wasn't like on the radio or anything like that. And I just thought, what a cool song.
Yeah.
And that pretty much stayed on almost every concert. But Winds of Change would pop in once in a while. And
my hot take on this would be that was a mistake to not let you duet because that's what makes that song so great is that it is a duet. Okay, how about let me throw another one at you. Yep. Did you ever sing Rock Myself to Sleep?
Oh, I was going to say that. I love that song. I know this is gonna sound listen,
that song is hilarious.
I'm still butthurt from everything. Like I'm doing really well. Like I thought, like after I got off the phone with you, I literally started crying because this has been such a hard, devastating time for me. But I remember thinking like, oh hey Mick, like Rock Myself to Sleep if you ever wanna, do it. Because it was such a cool like little Grace Slick song in Starship. Yeah. But we never did it. He might do this with this new girl. He really likes her, so.
Well, yeah, maybe. I would only want someone to do it if they appreciated that song and actually knew the song.
That song.
Yeah, that song is. I think the only song you could compare it to thematically would be She Bop. And
And there's just not enough songs like that. Oh, I guess I Touch Myself by the Divinals,
Right.
but we're getting off topic.
Exactly. You gotta have that, you gotta share that moment. And let
Right.
people know that there's sometimes you're just alone,
Yeah.
by yourself.
What goes into putting together a set list for a full show? If you're not sharing a bill, is it just Mickey's decision? Is it a band decision? How does a set list get put together?
It's a Mickey.
Yeah.
It's a Mickey
At the
thing.
start of a tour, like first night of the tour?
Every night.
Oh,
And
okay.
he doesn't really change things up very often. Once in a while,
Right.
he'll throw in a thing. But like sometimes he'll say, sometimes I'll say, oh, hey, and maybe he hated this about me. I don't know. But I could say like, oh, can we do Set the Night to Music? Or can we do this? Like usually the 90-minute song had all of the songs. And if it was a 90-minute set, we'd throw them all in there. Even the long, when we did the throwback to the tribute to the airplane days, we would do the long version. If he didn't want to do the long version, he'd take out Miracles and Count on Me, and then just put White Rabbit and Somebody to Love.
Okay.
So, but he was the set list maker.
Yeah.
So it was never like, hey, let's all sit down. We were not like that. It's different. Like my husband is in Little River Band, and their dynamic is so different than our dynamic was. They're very much a band, and they make decisions. Like obviously Wayne Nelson makes the major decisions, but he's very good at, asking and including the band. And Starship's just different. Mickey's the leader and he kind of makes the decisions, and we've all been, we knew that from the start, and that's just kind of how it is. And that's fine. It's not like we're out there like, why can't I, like, I don't think any of us were like, I really wish I could make the set list. But I will say this, Mickey is really good, and probably because he's been doing it for so long, at figuring out how many songs. Like if we go, okay, this is a 45-minute set, he'll know exactly how many songs to put on there.
Oh, that's cool.
And like, oh, it's 30 minutes. Okay, these are the songs. And
Okay.
it will be like exactly 30 minutes or 90 minutes. Exactly 90 minutes. It's incredible how he does it, but he does it.
Did he ever say why he refused to do Rock Myself to Sleep with you?
No, he's so different personalities. He's very passive, a very passive, non-confrontational person.
Oh, okay.
And I am completely different than that. And that's
Okay.
So no, I would never. He would just be like, oh, maybe, and then never talk about it again. All right.
I think everybody at home listening knows someone exactly like that.
Oh yeah. No.
That's
I'm
funny.
Italian. I'm very confrontational. It's probably not always in my best interest to be that way, obviously, but I'm very transparent and very like, if there's an issue, I'm like, there's an issue. This is what we need to talk about. Let's get it out on the table and work it out. And then, he's very opposite of that.
So looking back on your 15-year run, so much of that is touring.
Yeah.
Are there any gigs in particular that stand out? And you can say more than one. Are there any gigs that stand out as particular high points for you that were just so much fun that you'll always have those memories? Anything? What are the best gig memories that you have?
So there's probably two main ones.
Okay.
And then the third one is just a show that we do. Okay, so the very first one where it took my breath away and I couldn't even process was when at the time they were doing this Rewind Festival. They do it every year in England.
Yep.
And Scotland. And so they couldn't bring the whole band out. So Mickey and I went up and we performed at this, it was called, I think Henley on Thames. And it's just like the Thames, and so it's like there were 50,000 people probably there. There was a television broadcast of it. I was wearing this kind of fur vest that his wife loaned me so I could look cooler.
Okay.
And it worked. I loved it. But I remember walking on stage and we only sang maybe 3 or 4 songs because it just was the bands with their top 3 or 4 hits or 2 or 3 hits. and then they would go off. And I just thought, holy cow. First off, Rick Astley was there, and they love Rick Astley there. So he hosts all of these. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Rick Astley. And by the way, Rick Astley is the coolest, funniest, one of the most fun, makes fun of himself, wittiest sense of humor person, one of them I've ever met in this industry. Just so much fun. And people don't know that about him, but if you met him, you would know. And he loves his wife so much. He's just such a cool person. But
now, see, that's what you want to hear as a fan. That's so happy. I'm so happy to hear that, because I do love Rick Astley, and there's no shortage of stories of, rock stars being the opposite of that.
and I will tell you that, but going on that stage for that moment and getting that, having that many people just watch you, I couldn't even process it. It was in the most incredible feeling. The only down part about that particular one is I'm going to tell you the crappy story. The Bangles. So I was like a huge Bangles fan, and I wanted to meet them so bad. And they're like, sorry, we're really tired and we don't want to meet anybody. And I was like, what? I'm in the trailer right here. I'm not like, yeah, whatever. So I was really bummed because I didn't get to meet the Bangles. But then, yeah, you get some. I'm going to say this. This is my shout out. Billy Ocean, greatest human on earth.
Okay.
Every human angel, the person with the most light I've ever met, besides my Auntie Ollie. You might not put this on your podcast, but if you do, I want everyone to know that Billy Ocean was the most, even sometimes talking about him makes me cry. You just want to be around him 24/7 because you feel like you feel something from him, like this energy from him that's so beautiful. Greatest person I've ever met on the road as a musician, greatest human being. His band is incredible. They're incredible. They're like family. Most incredible human ever.
Wow, that's we can definitely make room for that. I have a lot of appreciation for Billy Ocean.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to interview that man,
I would. Oh, absolutely. I would jump
just try to be like, I love you so much, Billy.
If I promise you this, if I ever get him on this show, I will play him the clip of you saying that. It's a big if. It's a big if, but I definitely promise that.
The other one was going to New Zealand. New Zealand is one of the most breathtaking places. I always thought that, like, once I went to New Zealand, I thought, okay, I get it. Jesus, God put this little place over here for only certain people get to go and enjoy it. But it's just a special, special place in the world that you go there, and it's so incredibly gorgeous, and the people there are so wonderful. We did a show. There were at least, I don't know how many, 20,000, 12,000, something like that between. They all stayed out, and it was pouring rain. And it was just pouring rain. And they just screamed for us the whole time. And just being around those people were so lovely. And the beauty of New Zealand, if you ever get a chance to go to New Zealand, you have to, if it's on your bucket list, go. It's worth the 5,000 million hour flight. It's worth it because you just go there and it's just this little special, gorgeous place that, just so far away. Unless you're in Australia, then it's like just a plane ride. But it was beautiful. And then I love going to Disney every year. We would go twice a year for the Garden Rocks and the Food.
Oh, okay, of course.
And that's always my favorite because the fans there, that's where I built a lot of my family that are friends and family now. So they became fans, and then they became friends, and then now a lot of them have become family to me.
That's real sweet.
Yeah, they've changed my life. The fans have changed my life. A lot of the fans have changed my life. And the ones at Disney were exceptional.
Okay, so let's do the flip here. Here's the other side. Now, in all these 15 years of touring with Starship, there had to be at least one that sticks out as a bit of a horror story. Was there ever a worst gig of all time?
this is the most terrible gig ever. And that's the one where our guitar player died right after the show.
Okay, so not funny at all. Okay,
No,
so
not a
just
funny
let's
one.
let's be serious. Yeah. So tell me
Yeah,
about
that was,
tell us about that.
well, we were like, this is where I get to throw someone else under the bus again. We were in Nebraska. We had to drive 2 hours to this place, and it was next to this big building, but it's outside. It was very hot that day, and we were there with Survivor and Boston. Now, obviously, Boston was the finale, and we opened, us and Survivor. And I remember working with Boston, and I don't know if you know, but Boston's very much like, when Boston's there, it's Boston. And so they had all the trailers in the back rather than, so it was, every trailer was taken up by the Boston crew. So we had to get shuttled over to the building. And I remember, yeah, it was like,
There's one original guy left in that band.
Hey, but it's Boston. I get it. But like,
I get it.
One
I love
trailer
Boston.
man.
Yeah.
Just like, can you move your guitars?
Yeah.
No, it's okay. Can you use that dressing room?
Yeah.
So we got trucked there. So anyway, we ate before, and Mark, his name was Mark Abrahamian, and he would, he had some beers. He likes to drink beers on the show, and he's a smoker, but he was worked out all the time. He was really fit. He was only like, I think 46 at the time, and he was back there. He had steak. We all ate before the show, and then we had this one big room that we had curtained off our section and curtained off Survivor section, and then we had a couple tables out that we can all mingle with. So we did our show. We go out there and we do our show, and it's hot. Like it's sweating. It's really hot. And on the last show, the last song was "We Built This City on Rock and Roll," of course, and and then we're done. And I guess Mark had broken some strings or whatever. So Jeff, our bass player, looked over at him and was like, "Hey, are you okay, man?" He's like, "No, I'm just not feeling good. It's, I don't know." And so we thought he was getting overheated. In the meantime, like the keyboard player and I, who were super close, like we hung out all the time, we got shuttled up, and they got Mark shuttled up as fast as he can. But we're in the dressing room, and my phone starts ringing, and it starts ringing. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And I realized it's a 510 number, which is Austin. And I was like, why is Mark's trying to call me? Mark's trying to call me over and over again. But normally it would come up Mark Abrahamian. Now, I had just gotten T-Mobile, and obviously after this thing, I left T-Mobile. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, why is Mark trying to call? So I tried to call it back, and I had no service. So Phil calls back, and it's Mark's girlfriend, or fiance at the time. And she's talking to me, and she's like, hey, Mark was just on the phone with me. He's really, really sick. And then he started moaning, and then he felt like he was having an heart attack, and then he's not answering. He's not responding. I don't know where he is. He said he was really hot. And I thought, okay, so we're him and like keyboard player and I was like, stay on the phone with me. We're walking around. I'm like, Mark. And I thought, oh, somewhere to cool down, maybe the bathroom because of the tiles. So I go in there. He's not in there. Then the bass player comes out. He's like, have you seen Mark? And I was like, no. So of course we find him, and he's on the floor in the dark in a room. And I'm like, we found him. Let me call you back. I'm going to call 911. So I called 911, came down. It felt like it took them forever to get there. Luckily, there was a hospital not too far, but they didn't have emergency services on the premises, which is not normal for an outdoor concert venue. So I'm not happy about that. But
yeah.
So I'm like freaking out. And, they do CPR. They come in. They do the whole like electric. And it's not like the movies, so much worse. And I'm like in the midst of like, I'm having breakdowns. I'm going around. The Boston manager pulls me off to the side because I'm like freaking out, like praying to Jesus, like, please don't let him die. And in the meantime, I'm like, and then I call his fiancé. I was like, hey, listen, we're going to bring him to the thing. So they finally got a pulse, but we brought him to the hospital. They worked on him for a really long time. And I'm in the meantime, like I'm breaking down and then getting on the phone with her and being like, everything's going to be okay. Just make sure you're not alone, and get off the phone. And I'm like, oh my God. And he didn't make it.
Wow.
And I remember the drive back. And it was a 2-hour drive without him. And normally he's in the car with us. And I remember one special moment of driving to the show with him in the back seat. And he's not like a super jokester kind of guy. He's very kind of, solemn and, introverted. And I remember he said, "Hey, I got a joke." And I thought, "Ooh, Mark Abrahamian's going to tell a joke." And he's like, "Where did George Washington keep his armies?" And I was like, "Where, Mark?" And he goes, "In his sleeveys." That's the best memory, the final memory of Mark telling me a joke that was so funny. And so that was the hardest show, especially the drive home and flying home and the surrealness of it and just watching him. It's just not something you ever want anyone to have to watch or go through.
Oh no. And at a gig too. Was there press coverage about this?
There was a little bit of press coverage. I mean, it was on the internet a little bit, but probably could have been more, I'm sure, but I didn't hear as much. I really didn't want to talk about it because literally right when I got home, literally as I sat on my bed after I got home to process what happened, my sister called me and said that my other sister had about 2 weeks to live. So I was bad time. So if anyone wrote anything in my face, I did not go on Facebook. I did not do anything. And if somebody wrote to me and was like, "Hey," and posting all this stuff, I would just have my mom handle it. And I was like, "Can you call this person and tell them to stop posting stuff about my life? I don't want to see anything from anybody. I just want to leave him and respect the fact that he's not here with us and to let the band process what just happened, because it wasn't like he just didn't come to a show. We watched him go, and it was not, it's very traumatic to watch that. So worst show ever, that one.
No, absolutely. That's very heavy. And I appreciate you sharing that with me, because I know that's a very hard memory to relive, but I did not know that. I think I knew that Starship's guitarist passed away at some point, but I didn't know it was like immediately after a gig.
It was terrible.
Oh my goodness.
It was terrible.
No, that's heartbreaking.
In my mind, I was like, if we just had one trailer, he could have cooled off sooner. We would have seen him, all those things you go through your head. I'm like, damn it, Boston, why?
God.
You can't, things happen and they happen and you can't change anything. And
right.
And terribly, he was a beautiful soul, like a beautiful person, just a great guy. And, when John Roth came in as the replacement, I just remember for a moment thinking, dang it, like no one can Mark. And as soon as he started playing, I was just like crying. And I just thought, thank you for coming to be this person. So, and John Roth is extra special. So he's a perfect fit for that band.
Excellent. Wow. Yeah, that's heavy. So let's take a breath, and then we're gonna get to my last couple questions here.
And that was Stephanie Calvert, a former vocalist for the band Starship featuring Mickey Thomas. I need to thank Stephanie for being such a fantastic guest and for being so generous with her time. And also, on behalf of all Starship fans, I have to thank her for the 15 years of wonderful live performances she delivered during her stint with the band. I'd also like to say I really appreciate that she shared her memories about Mark Abrahamian. I know that's a very difficult, sensitive topic, so I really appreciate that she shared that story with us here today. Remember, part 2 is going to cover her experiences recording on the 2013 Loveless Fascination album, and we will also discuss why she is no longer with Starship, so keep an eye out for that. That will be posted soon. And with that, thank you for listening. I'm going to play us out with a little bit more of Stephanie singing For Your Eyes Only.
You can see so much in me that's new. I never felt until I looked at you. For your eyes only for you.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember the big 4 things you can do to support this show that don't cost a dime. Number 1, listen to the show. If you're hearing this now, that means you did this part already. Thank you. There is an infinite amount of content out there, so you choosing to spend some time listening to this show means a great deal to me. Number 2, if you like what we did here, please recommend this show to family, friends, or anyone you know who's looking for a podcast, particularly about music. Share our links in Facebook groups, subreddits, and recommendation threads. Whatever you can do is highly appreciated on my end. Number 3, find us on social media. Follow us on Twitter at PlayThatPodcast. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/playthatpodcast. And subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/playthatrock'n'roll. Lots of great material like photos and vlogs on all 3 platforms, as Play That Rock and Roll is very much meant to be a content hub as well as a podcast. And finally, the big ask. Number 4, please give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I know this part is a hassle, but it really does help the show a great deal. Not just because it affects the algorithm, but also because it gives me something I can point to when pitching this show to potential guests. The more social media followers and positive ratings the show has, the better chance I have for booking high-profile guests for interviews. So if you take a moment to give us even just a 5-star rating, you are actively giving us a tool to do bigger and better things here. But whatever the case, I appreciate any and all efforts you take to support us here at Play That Rock and Roll. Be sure to join us next time for more great stories and music from the world of classic rock.
You really know me, that's all I